Welcome, everybody. We have Posh Spice, my favorite of the Spice Girls, with us today. And he is bathed and he is decked out in his traditional Hollywood costumes. I mean, Halloween costumes that they wear in Serbia. And we are going to
Yeah,
what's up, Posh? How you doing?
I'm doing very well, as you can see, as you said, decked out, surrounded by Serbian paraphernalia and all my instruments. You can see my piano here. You can see my other children there. They're my children. I'm not a dog or cat mom or dad. I'm an instrument dad.
That's all good. We love our Serbs around here. Guys, if you would hit like and share, we are about to get deep. My boy Posh here has actually done some deep dives on the book of Abraham. As you guys know, we've had a lot of Mormons call in. We've had a lot of Mormon debates. We have not done a deep dive on this topic. So why don't you, before we get started, and I'll have Posh's links below. I did add them to the show description, to the title. Posh, tell us first of all about how everybody thinks about the Book of Mormon. They think about the Doctrine and Covenant, Pearl of Price, etc. And I think this document is part of one of those texts. Why is this,
Yes.
first of all, such an important one, and why do we need to really talk about this one?
Well, to give you a bit of background as to why I even got onto this, for those who don't know, I've worked for the Crucible, have for almost a year now, and I help with religious debate, research, and prep. So Andrew calls me up one day, well, Posh, we're going after the Mormons. So off I go like a good soldier, start researching because Lord knows someone has to pay me to read the rubbish, but obviously I started doing so. So that's some quality engineering right there, right? I knew enough about Mormonism to reject it, but if someone asked me to debate, I'd refuse to debate it. So off I went researching. As you said, there are three collections, shall we call them, of Mormon scriptures. The Book of Mormon itself and all of its constituent books, the Doctrines and Covenants, which is considered scripture for them, and the Pearl of Great Price, as you said. The Book of Abraham is part of one of them. That would be the Pearl Great Price. Now, what's so important about this is that he made quite a few very remarkable statements and so many, many errors that can be very easily debunked. That is the significance of it. Also, theologically, it's significant because that's where you get the pre-existence of the souls. That's the only place in their scriptures that I'm aware of that Kolob is mentioned, for example. So it is a very important text, and there are very fundamental doctrines that are based on it. So that's one of the things I started researching. I read the other ones as well, obviously, but nothing compares to how this book, which is about a dozen pages or
Nothing
so.
compares. Nothing compares to Kolob.
You have no idea like how sad it is to throw pop references at me. I
mean,
would just miss
you've never
everything.
heard the Prince song. Wait a minute, you've heard surely the Sinead O'Connor version of it. Nothing compares to you.
Nope.
What? That's
Trust me, this is a conversation I've had many, many times.
Well, I mean, it's just one of the most famous. She was an Irish pop singer.
I know who she was,
and that was her
but
big hit, was covering the Prince song.
Okay, fair enough. But so I know two Prince songs, "Purple Rain" and "When Doves Cry." So I'm not completely.
Okay, well there you
go. As I said, it's a sad thing to talk pop culture with.
That's
me.
okay. I apologize for changing it. And tell us about the Lords of Kolob.
The laws of Kolob are mentioned only here, as I said. And as we will get to the book itself, I split it into two portions as we talk about it. So there are problems with the process itself, its procurement, its translation.
Could I
In and
could
of
I
itself.
mention something really quick before you go into
Yes.
that? And that is just simply that even though we are joking, this is actually in McConkey's uh, Book of Mormon Doctrines. There is an entry, an entire entry on Kolob, just to let you know. Here it is right here. And it says, I'll read it very quickly. Kolob is
Okay.
the first creation. It is the name of the planet nearest to the celestial residence of God. So God has a body and he lives on a planet near Kolob. It is the first in the space government's hierarchy of space governance, and
Yeah.
pertaining to measurement. One day in Kolob equals 1,000 years of Earth time.
Yes, and that's in the book. That is specifically mentioned. But as I said, there are so many things happening here, and so I would split it into the problems of the process of procurement and translation, and if we grant all of that, like, okay, there's a way to explain it, which there isn't, but if we did grant it, then there's a problem with the content itself. So, as someone who spends most of his nerd stats, going into linguistics and history, like things just kept jumping out at me that were very basic mistakes, but very easily understood to be made by someone in the early 19th century, especially like because it was barely discovered, like the Rosetta Stone being unlocked and the ability to translate hieroglyphics was still debated, right? So no one was around to correct any of this. So you can see how it got its momentum. We like to think, oh, well, in, Champollier, like in 1824, I believe it was, unlocked the Rosetta Stone, the key to translating hieroglyphics. And I was like, well, so now everyone from that year onwards can, go and decipher hieroglyphics. No, there was plenty of debate. There were decades of disputations about whether it's reliable, sufficiently reliable, how much can it imply. So it was still very much in higher academia at this point. So no one was there to correct our buddy, our pal, our friend, Joseph Smith. But he also makes some very cardinal errors. We will go to the link I emailed you.
Yes, I've got the link pulled up below you. One question before we get into it, though. Could you summarize briefly, if you're able? So they have these three major texts. They've got Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenant, Pearl of Price, and this one is part of which one?
Pearl of Great Price.
Okay. What are these three books mainly focused on, if you are able to summarize? If not, we can move on to the...
Right. I can. So basically, the Book of Mormon itself are the translated plates that we get from Nephi and all the other buddies, right? That's the proper, so to speak, Mormon scripture. Doctrines and Covenants are collections of predictions and statements that he made. They are classified, enumerated. The enumeration has changed over time. So it's not just adding on, they've been reorganized and reshuffled, but are still considered holy scriptures because they're prophecies of Smith. And then the Pearl of Great Price is sort of how I would summarize it is, so what's left of it is put into one book. There's his translation of Matthew, I can't remember which exact chapter, then also some predictions are there. The Book of Abraham, obviously. So it's sort of the leftovers that are neither belonging to the corpus of the Book of Mormon, nor just a part of the Doctrines and Covenants. So that's a very basic summary of it. We can see some through lines, by the way. Now, this is a stylistic critique, which is a very difficult critique to make if you're very good faith. We hear a lot of those about the Pauline epistles, for example. They say, well, look how differently he writes or speaks in these in these different epistles. No one apparently knows what an amanuensis is, because we have St. Paul writing with his own hands, and he mentions it because his eyesight wasn't very good. So when he wrote himself, he wrote in very large letters. But if you have an amanuensis, an amanuensis will influence the style because they are trained in proper grammar as they would see it. But as far as Smith is concerned, what I found hilarious reading through the Book of Mormons, you have these like King Jamesy phrases that appear. And not only do they appear, they appear aggressively. So you have so many verses that start with, and it came to pass that, and it came to pass that. I've counted as far as 5 verses in a row, starting with that. But that is stylistically the problem, because obviously that's not how people would speak, like regular people would speak back in the day. But he knew what churchy King Jamesy English would sound like, so he's trying to replicate that. So it's throughout his translations and works, right? And you can see how pathetic it is, obviously, because when you don't have sufficient knowledge of it, which the people who translated the King James Bible did, right? They were fancy schmancy Englishmen, right, in the 16th century. So they didn't need to pretend to speak like that. That's how they were educated to talk. But we see this nonsense throughout this, even onto, and all sorts of phraseology. There are stylistic anachronisms that we also find. We will get to some in the Book of Abraham later on. But obviously, the entire works that are translated just ooze with disingenuous nonsense and pretending to be like the Bible.
Yeah, and I'm looking under McConkey's entry. I thought this was a fascinating giveaway. He says, well, the pearl of great price is the things that were lost in the Pentateuch. Now get this, watch this bait and switch. He actually says, you're going to love this. So McConkey says, contrary to higher critics, Moses actually did write the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of Moses. But the present form that we have does not contain these secret teachings that were originally there that Joseph Smith has restored. So this is the great admission once again that he's trying to avoid higher criticism, but then he's turning around and being a higher critic by saying that the texts are corrupted. And really what's missing is this secret book of Abraham.
He's actually worse than a higher critic. So point. Jim Bob has made a huge part of his exchange with Mormons, like Joseph Smith adding himself to Genesis. Because we have, and I originally thought it was just at the end of Genesis, adding that prediction about his, name being Joseph. Turns out, no, he interpolated a lot of other things. But so while reading through the Book of Mormon itself, which is purportedly, written, most of it at least, like in 600 BC, it predicts that there will be like these apostles, right, in like 600 years or so, and they will keep everything pure. But then the great abominable church will corrupt things. I didn't write down the exact verse where it says that the Gentiles receive purely from the Jews, right? So we get everything.
Yeah, this is an important point, because if you go to the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints website, one of the first things that will come up when you look over at their scriptures is, I think it's the introduction to the Book of Mormon, but it starts with the great apostasy, that the church died. And that's, of course, the whole ethos of Mormonism is the restoration.
Yes, obviously. But one part of that is, and you could hear about this in Jim Bob's latest debate with a Mormon, because we discussed this prior to the debate, and we talked like, listen, if we receive purely from the Jews, then we can have a timeline of when we would have these corruptions, right? So it would be after the death of the apostles. That's in First Nephi 13, if I'm not mistaken. But so let's say, obviously, whether John is dead or not is for them a question. But even if we just grant them like the first century, so from the second century onward, we can expect copies of Genesis that lack these interpolations, restorations from their worldview. The problem is we have the Dead Sea Scrolls from the Qumran community, the Essenes, and Genesis is the most copied book in that collection. And they date from the 3rd century BC to the 1st century. So, because the Essenes are scattered at the destruction of Jerusalem in 70, they weren't in Jerusalem, but that whole campaign sort of destroys their semi-nomadic existence. But again, we have these preserved until 1947. They weren't touched. So from the 3rd century BC to the mid 20th century, no one touches them, and their Genesis is in accordance with ours. It lacks these interpolations. So either the Book of Mormon is wrong, and it's not the Gentiles that have corrupted it, but the Jews as well, prior to the Gentiles. So Mormonism is wrong, or it's the Genesis has been, their Genesis is tampered with. Therefore, it's wrong because you're messing with Scripture. So it's a catch-22. There's no way to get out of it.
Now, one little interesting side note, and Father Deacon Dr. Ananias has put into the chat this link that I was looking at here from BYU University, Brigham Young University. Apparently now the Mormons are trying to revise their position on the Great Apostasy and alter and update that. But that's nothing surprising because everybody has to keep in mind Mormonism is actually charismatic. They believe in ongoing new public revelation. So they can revise and rewrite their mistakes like any of the other cults do conveniently because, well, the reigning apostles and prophets get new revelations that make it all work together.
Yeah, but they don't. However,
no, I know, but I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, but you see, there's also a big problem. You see how they're all nice and they all want to work together and stuff. But specifically, what they believe is that there are two churches: the Church of the Lamb of God and the Church of the Devil, the Great Abominable Church, with its priestcraft. And funnily enough, that's not Nephi. I have this. Moroni 8:9 calls infant baptism an abomination, which is an interesting, time because not even the original reformers were against infant baptism. John Calvin was pretty insistent on it, right? So it's strange that we find this controversy that didn't exist until later on in the Reformation, in certain circles of it at least. So again, one might view that as a 19th century charlatan, giving credence to himself or his teaching by creating a fake 6th century BC document that just happens to align with him. But yeah, obviously, like a lot of these movements, they mostly view the Catholic Church as this greatest evil in the world. So that's nothing new. But again, you can see how it is anachronistic with these problems. I have lots of things. One of my favorite is that it calls the Virgin Mary exceedingly fair and white.
Well, let me add that to be clear on what the classic Mormon doctrine is, in McConkie's Mormon Doctrine book, there is an entry on the Great Apostasy. It's just under the apostasy here. And it says, after the time of our Lord, the loss of the gospel occurred, and the nations went into darkness and a moral decline. This dark ages was an apostasy that was universal. Darkness covered the earth, and then it cites Doctrine and Covenant 112:23. This darkness still prevails except amongst those to whom the gospel has been restored through Mormonism.
Right. And there are lots of things that are very strange. For example, I tried testing out some arguments on Twitter, and I keep asking them because one of their claims is, well, you trust Paul, but you don't trust Joseph Smith, right? That's one of the approaches. Because is Paul specifically prophesied in the Old Testament? Okay, no, not by name, but guess who is prophesied a lot? The guy who chose Paul to be his emissary, his apostle to the Gentiles, and also what a lot of because you know how much heretics and Muslims and all sorts of people go for Saint Paul. Recently, Andrew debated that a liberal Catholic Fugelsang or whatever, however you pronounce his surname, like he basically says the classic thing that Paul corrupted Christianity. He was Jesus's conservative PR guy, and he destroyed Jesus's progressive, pro-LGBT, pro-abortion, pro-feminist message, right? Because they don't seem to realize, first of all, that St. Paul was dead by the time the Gospels were written down, right? We tend to forget it because he said, no, he went off and he started his church. You know, like, no, he was dead by the time the Gospels were written down. He didn't go for an upgrade from being a respected a Pharisee into being beaten and stoned and healed poorly and having all sorts of problems. Right? He didn't go for some material upgrade. He did quite the opposite, actually. But you know how common it is to attribute all evil. He's like a Zazel, attribute all evil to Paul. So
Yeah, a
yeah,
lot of Mormons, a lot of Muslims, a lot of the
mhm.
weird cults, higher critics too. They all kind of latched onto that.
Yeah, and the thing is, they forget that Saint Paul was introduced to the apostles by Saint Ananias, right? But they stay with him, like Saint Luke goes with him and records like his sermons and stuff. So the apostles who did meet Jesus obviously were like, yeah, this guy is solid, even though he was like the most obvious fed, in the beginning. Right. So but
Well,
they forget to
one other
mention
point,
that part.
just a little side note as I think about this idea that prophets are prophesied. Uh, as I think about this in Scripture, I mean, you have the statement in Deuteronomy, which we think is a prediction of Christ, that I will raise up one of your brethren. Hear him you
Mhm.
shall hear. I mean, in that sense, Christ is a prophet who is prophesied, but none of the other prophets are
Yeah.
explicitly prophesied. There's no prophecy that Ezekiel shall be born that I'm aware of. I mean, you have some statements like in Ezekiel where it talks about, a virgin will give birth and conceive and so forth. But
Yeah, and
you don't
she's the eastern
typically,
gate through whom no one else will enter.
we don't typically have a prediction of
Yeah,
prophets. It's a prediction of the Messiah, who is the ultimate prophet.
right. But what I was asking them is, why would we expect someone like Joseph Smith? Like, give me something, right? Because from what I'm hearing in the Old and the New Testament, there's a pretty important guy coming up, and he will put things in order. And as far as we're concerned, that's the Lord incarnating and establishing the church, and his incarnation, life and death and resurrection are all very, very important for us Orthodox Christians. Uh, we don't get, and then there's a blackout, and then there's some guy who comes over near the end and fixes things. Nothing of the sort. So I think I got Revelations 14:8, like an angel comes, spreads the gospel throughout the world. Like, okay, and then there are other angels mentioned after that, right? So I don't see how we get from that to, well, you're all wrong and have been wrong for more than 1800 years before this guy showed up and fixed everything. So we have no reason to expect anyone like Joseph Smith, right? Paul is there because he is in full continuity with what was being preached. Like he is instrumental, and he's chosen for his massive knowledge of all sorts of things and his stewardship under Gamaliel. And so, we have reasons to trust Paul. I have no reason to expect someone to come in 1800 years later and just improv it, wing it as far as how things go. So we are talking about Mormonism generally now, right? We can start at the Book of Abraham. I have my notes here. So to get our timeline
before
straight,
we do, there was a specific request. Could you guys look at Doctrine and Covenant 132? I think that's the one that has some pretty wild stuff in it. Is that the one that talks about the nature of God and Adam? God is like Adam, I think. I mean, what is it to the person that's asking here, Maya Jean? What is it about 132 that you find interesting? And I'll pull it up here. But do you want to get to this? This is the supposed papyrus, right? Is that where we're going now, Posh?
You don't have to open the link yet. Those are specifically the facsimiles he made of things in the papyrus. I will give a general introduction. So, did you say 132? The Doctrine.
She says Doctrine and Covenant 132. Mormons cannot handle this chapter. Can you give me a summary of what it is that are the specific things in 132, and I'll mention it.
Yeah, I can't give you a specific summary. I can read the intro that says revelation given through Joseph Smith.
Yeah, no, not you. I'm saying, like, I'm asking her if this is, like you said, eternal covenant, marriage covenant. Oh, this is the polygamy chapter. Okay, that's why. It's a
chapter. On the they have like records. We have court records of their multiple marriages, which are provided on their website. So they are so strange to me. They are very mercurial. Like, nothing is stable. Nothing is set in stone. Everything is a both and you know, who knows? It's like you're too rigid. You're too autistic about it, and it's just rubbish. So you feel free to interrupt me if we get.
No, that's fine. We can head on over here to the. So it's Doctrine and Covenant 132, which is the polygamy chapter. But if you want to get to the papyrus and all this gibberish nonsense here, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll give you a basic introduction of how things went down. So he purchases through crowdfunding methods. He purchases a bunch of papyri and some mummies and stuff in 1835. Bear in mind, this is important. This is 9 years before his death, right? So we are pretty well into his prophethood at this point. So he has a following and everything established. And what he claims is that he finds autographa, so penned by their own hand, as he would put it, works of Abraham and Joseph, the patriarchs. This is important because it will allow us to date things. So he goes on to translate them, but only finished a portion of what was to become the Book of Abraham before his death in 1844. The book was canonized by the LDS Church in 1880 and is part of the group of scriptures named the Pearl of Great Price. So here's the important thing. Purchases them in 1835, translates it through until his death. Doesn't get very far. As I said, the book is about a dozen pages long. But is very important. What was supposed to be the Book of Joseph never even got translated, right? Even the Book of Abraham isn't finished as far as what was claimed to be there. But they can't say this was some side project, this wasn't part of the inspired work, because their ongoing prophecy and prophethood and the presidency, like the Mormon Pope or whatever, right? They canonized the Pearl of Great Price in 1880, so it's part of their scriptures. Don't let them maneuver around. There are some LDS groups which claim that they reject the Pearl of Great Price, or at least the Book of Abraham. And as we will see, there's a good reason you would want to reject it. But considering how they purport, how they pretend their system works. No two ways about it. So what happens is a bit of a difficulty on our end to critique, because these papyri exchange hands over time, and they end up in Chicago, and most of them are destroyed in the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. Not all, though. And the ones which aren't destroyed end up in the Met, right, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York in 1974. Horrible year for Mormons, 1974, it seems. And they they inform the LDS Church of this in 1966 and hand it over to them in 1967. There are some Mormon publications that had to publish how big of a problem this is, but as you know, they're everything and nothing at the same time. It's both the most important thing ever and completely dismissible, and whatever you want to do. So, anything you'd like to comment so far?
No, go ahead. I'm listening. This is an area I don't know a lot about.
Okay, no problem. So the problem was that by this time, so we're now well into the second half of the 20th century, and we have lots of Egyptologists. The methods of translating and interpreting hieroglyphics is well established. Huge numbers of finds, which will be important for our facsimiles later, have been discovered. Their meanings have been deciphered, even their functions. Like, we'll get to what a hypocephalus is, which is like a burial pillow or something. So we know how to translate what's survived. So they can't just say, well, it was all destroyed. All the relevant things were destroyed in the fire. That's one of the cop-outs. The ones he actually had, they were destroyed in the fire. What's left are these miscellaneous other things. But that's where our facsimiles, which are in the book themselves, right? He made facsimiles. He drew things as exact copies.
And then I have that first image in the slide, facsimile 1. Is that what he did there?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it doesn't exist on the site I sent you. But when we get to it, you will see he just drew in a human head.
No, that's a very famous... The first image on the site that you sent is the head he added.
Yeah. But that's a superimposition of his facsimile onto the piece of the papyrus that had the head missing.
I got you. Okay.
And right, so he didn't literally draw on the papyrus; he edited it in the facsimile. And what's very funny is that this is a very common depiction of a funerary rite. And believe it or not, it's very commonly known now that there's one god that's very commonly associated with the afterlife, and that's Anubis. So originally in these depictions, you would depict Anubis. But because the head was missing, he just drew in a human head.
So in other words, he didn't draw Anubis.
Yep. But he didn't know that this was a common depiction. It was like we have common depictions in the Orthodox Church, like very common icons. Like the Most Holy Theotokos with baby Jesus. Like, imagine if an icon was damaged, so there was...
Yeah, and somebody drew in Kuato from Total Recall.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah.
So this is a common image, but it's understandable that Joseph Smith didn't know it. But at the same time, that's what ends up exposing his charlatanry.
Yes, great point. So you can see here in the images, the first image is where the original supposed papyrus that he has is imposed over his drawing, and he's added a human head. But then you'll notice that this common drawing actually had an Anubis head, which he didn't know.
Yeah. You can see he's got black skin, like that's how Anubis is depicted, which reemerges as a problem in the third facsimile as well. Because guess what he thinks black skin means? A man from early 19th century. It means a person cursed,
right?
Slightly funnier than that, he thinks it's a slave. because hey, there's these white ones and there's the black one, so obviously the black one is a slave, but it's just again Anubis. But again, you can see it's early 19th century American, trying to figure things out or trying to create a story out of
It's
this.
funny you said that because there's a very similar accusation about Crowley as well, that when he was trying to construct the Egyptology for his cult, because it was prior to Rosetta Stone, he got all these things wrong. And so it's not the Egyptian deity that he was, channeling and speaking with, because he got a lot of things wrong.
That's understandable, but again, charlatans are charlatans, and there's only so many ways you can take it, right? But he relied on the ignorance of people around him, and we will get to his mistakes in the content, which I think are worse than the mistakes in the process, because they go all the way down to, well, it doesn't have to mean that this was what was on the papyri, because God could have used these papyri to inspire him to write this translation, which then wouldn't be a translation, but this book. So God gave him the real book through fake papyri. That's one of the quotes. I don't know what to do with that. There are simply some arguments I hear. I'm starting to doubt you people aren't allowed to do drugs.
Yeah, right.
So let's go through my notes further on. The problem was they turned out to be nothing but funerary or burial Egyptian texts and had nothing to do with Abraham or Joseph. The oldest ones could be dated to around 300 BC, destroying any notion that they were autographic, i.e. written by Abraham or Joseph themselves. The texts purported to be from Joseph were never translated, but were discovered to be portions of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So just to be clear, even the Egyptian Book of the Dead, I think that's the 15th century BC. Right? So even that's too late, not to mention 3rd century BC. And then some Mormon woman on Twitter started telling me, yeah, but it's not actually, there's no Book of the Dead, there's a Book of Breathing. Like, first of all, there are two, and they're like the same thing, but from about a millennium later. Again, just throw something out, just find a cop-out. They will take it because they're all so nice, right? So that's the fruit of the spirit. Every debate. I participated in one debate rather hilariously, substituting for Andrew, and it was Jim Bob and myself against two Mormons. And I just lost it at one point. I don't know what to do with people who will accept anything and just say, well, look at the fruits of our church. Like, look at how nice we are. Like the families, the number of children. Like, okay, that's great, by the way. I'm not going to say that's a bad thing. But if you're going to do that based on lies, I'm not going to accept that that's from God. That you can lie people into. And by the way, there are plenty of bad things done by the Mormon Church and Mormons, Mitt Romney, but again, they never accept that as proving that they are wrong. But the fact that they are nice, and we don't have Mormons in Serbia, I don't think so, at least. I know people chase Jehovah's Witnesses with like shovels and stuff. I'm not joking about that, by the way, not even slightly.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of the countries have banned these groups because they're also used by the CIA openly. So the Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, etc., are part of, reconnaissance, spying, espionage, soft power, etc.
But here is the idea that people think they're literal Satanists who will eat their children. So yeah, chasing them with shovels and axes and stuff, or threatening with guns. That's all fun and games. That's proper Eastern European religious debate. Okay, so moving on. This shows that Smith was openly deceiving people, pretending to translate these funerary texts into the so-called Book of Abraham, and purely inventing the contents, including the claims of multiple gods, the planet Kolob, and other such nonsense. Were it legitimate, the book would have predated Moses and therefore Genesis by centuries. Now, this is important. They will claim that Moses used the Book of Abraham in part as inspiration for writing Genesis. Because there are overlapping claims, like Genesis 1 and I think 2 are somewhat exist in some variation, right? So he obviously didn't just copy Genesis 1 and 2 into it, but he like reworded certain things, added these indications that there are multiple gods and that everything is eternal, so it's not creation ex nihilo, etc., etc. But the claim is that this is, proof, because if this is from Abraham, it predates Moses, and look at the similarities. Therefore, Moses must have used this in his writing of Genesis. So do with that what you will. Again, this is all very schizoid to me.
Do you want to discuss the interpretation that he gives to these images on this funerary papyrus versus how it's understood now?
We're getting into that right
Okay,
now. So
right. Go
let
ahead.
me read up my notes on this. So some images found on the papyri were incomplete, and Smith produced facsimiles, that is the direct copies, of them by drawing things in. One important example is a facsimile allegedly representing a pagan priest about to sacrifice Abraham, with the angel of God's presence there to stop it. However, this turned out to be a pretty common depiction of Anubis, whose iconic head is missing from the papyrus Joseph Smith had, and drew in a human head. Embalming someone whose name is Hor, and the angel is a representation of Hor's spirit. Other items on the image were also completely made up, such as the 4 canopic jars, the ones, I'm basically just, you can open up the facsimiles and we'll read from there rather than.
Yeah, they're on the screen.
Okay, I didn't see it. So
you won't see it. It's on the live stream.
Yeah, that's. I'll open it up on my end. So, are you showing like the enumerated one?
Yes.
The first facsimile, right? So, if you go down there, scroll down a bit, you will see a side by side comparison of what Joseph Smith claimed to be in the picture versus what Egyptologists can say very confidently is there. So would you like to read some of these, or I can just
yeah, sure. So basically Joseph Smith says that the number one, the bird there, is the angel of the Lord from Genesis. And in modern Egyptian interpretation from scholars, that is the soul of the deceased, the Ba of the deceased. He says that this is Abraham fastened on the altar, number 2. Modern Egyptology says, no, this is the deceased named Hur. Number 3 is the idolatrous priest of Elkanah. And it is not. It's supposed to be Anubis, as you can see here in the originals.
Yes.
Number 4, it says the altar sacrifice of these idolatrous priests, the gods are Elkanah, Libnah, Machmakra, Korash, and Pharaoh. And this is a common funeral bier or a lion couch. So it's not as you can see, it's not an altar, it's a couch that's a lion.
So they would put them on there and start dissecting. And that's what Anubis is, that's part of his job.
He makes up Egyptian gods, Elkanah, Libnah, Machmakra, Korash. They are actually the jars containing the organs of the deceased, and they're the sons of Horus named Kebesenuf, Dwamatef, Hapi, and Imseti. The
I'm saying well done. That's a very good pronunciation.
9, the idolatrous god of Pharaoh, which is it looks like an alligator.
Yeah, it's very hard to see anything, but that's Horus.
Modern Egyptology says that's Horus. Number 10, this is supposed to be Abraham in Egypt, which I guess is the whole image.
Right. So he
I don't understand what's Abraham in Egypt there.
I think it's a piece of writing that he says Abraham in Egypt.
Oh, I
That's how
see.
I
So
think.
the writing is supposed to say Abraham in Egypt, but actually that is a libation table that bears wine, oil, and offerings common in Egypt. Okay, I see. It's a little table. I see. Um, Number 11. This is designed to represent the pillars of heaven, so the Egyptians understood it according to Joseph Smith, but rather it is actually a palace facade called a sarek, which is the pillars that you see at the bottom is supposed to represent the palace. It's not a
Yeah.
It's not the pillars of heaven. And then 12 is the waters where the crocodile is swimming. It says this is just water that a crocodile swims in, but Joseph Smith thought it was the firmament. Okay.
Yeah. So you can see, again, this is a very common depiction, which is why we are so confident in our understanding of it. It's not something isolated. And he just makes everything up. So we will get to context, but this Elkanah, Libna, Mamakra, Korash, and it's just rubbish. I went to some Mormon site that attempts to explain it. So, oh well, there was like a hill near this place, and if you read it upside down or something, so put it through like 10 lenses, and you get something sort of similar to Mama Kra, and then you come back. But no, there isn't. Not to mention the fact that Egyptians didn't practice human sacrifice. Right? That's not
Well,
part of their religion.
there are some instances of that at certain stages, but normally they did not. There are
Yeah,
some.
it's
There
not
is.
common.
Yeah, it's not common, but I do have a book by a scholar that argues that that's a misconception that it did happen, but it wasn't common.
Okay, that's fair enough. Obviously, you have mystery schools. I think Egypt basically invented those, more or less. But it's not a normal part of Egyptian religious practices, and they are pretty decently documented. Their pantheon is pretty decently documented. So we would be aware of these gods, what they would be called. Maybe Elkanah is another name for Isis or something, right? But again, nothing. We just have nothing. He does, like, you watch a lot of films, but
Well, it's
every
obvious he
alien.
makes up a lot of names.
Yeah, but and they are not connected. We'll get to one name later on, and I will nerd out a bit linguistically, but he does basically the thing. You know how in every film, like, aliens have to have a Z, an X, and a Y in their
Yeah,
name.
they have a lot of Z's for sure.
Yeah, so because that's all alieny and stuff. They're like Ziklax and stuff like that. So he's doing apparently the 19th century version of that. I mean, Mama Cross sounds like something you'd
Exactly.
find in, like, in at least like a fantasy RPG or something. Maybe not sci-fi per se, right? So we can go through the other two if you'd like.
Well, the next image is showing the other common depictions with Anubis doing the same basic funeral rite. So it's not a human sacrifice ritual, it's a burial passage to the underworld ritual.
Yeah, and this circle, as you see, this is what we call a hypocephalus, which hypo meaning under and cephalus meaning noggin. So you would
Are you
have
talking about his
these-
magic sigil here, this big circle?
It's not his. That's an Egyptian practice.
This circle is the facsimile too?
Yes. So there are these circular things that can be made of papyrus all the way up to gold if you're rich enough. But that's going to be hypocephalus, means, like, as I said, under your noggin, right, your head. So it's like a pillow, and it is a type of sigil magic, but it's like an amulet that's supposed to help you navigate the afterlife.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Gotcha.
So again, this is a very common thing. It's not some far off thing that no one has ever seen. We have lots of these. Right? Would you like to go read through them again, or should we just?
Right. So the list has here. Joseph Smith says that it's really hard to see, so I'm just going to kind of summarize, and I'll put the link in the chat if you guys want to see the details of this. It's a little too much to try to explain.
Okay, I can read it. I have the site open, so I have access to it.
Go ahead.
Just scroll through it on the video so people see what we see. So Joseph Smith's interpretation of number one, which is at the dead center of this, says this is Kolob, the residence of God, but this is actually the god Khnumu, according to Egyptologists. Number two, let's see what number two is. This little picture above the center. So it stands next to Kolob, called by the Egyptians Oliblish, but this is Amun-Re, god with two faces representing the rising and the setting sun. So Re, this is Amun-Ra. You've probably heard that pronunciation, although people have switched to the proper pronunciation being Ra, and now people call him Re. Amun is still Amun. So number three is to the right of number two and says God sitting on his throne clothed with power and authority, and this is Horus Re riding in his boat. So this is this combination of Horus and Re. Number four, this was somewhere off. I don't know who well, Joseph Smith numbered it that's why it doesn't make any sense. So even I can't see where number four is.
It's fine. Like people can go look at this individually. So let's just kind of work through like some of the high points, because there's a lot of these. It goes all the way down to like 23. So basically, it's another situation where he just sort of renames everything that we now know in modern Egyptology has nothing to do with the gibberish that Joseph Smith came up with.
And if you notice, you will see a lot of things are empty on the left side, like 12 through 16, 18 through 21, and 23. 22 and 23 just says, no annotation given. But you will see a lot of things that he didn't translate. So Egyptologists, modern Egyptologists, can translate them, but he just writes this one little thing to encompass all of them. So he misses out on a lot of these small inscriptions. So he doesn't make up everything for everything. Some he just sort of skips over. Which you think it would be important if we got something from Abraham, you wouldn't just half-ass it. But not if you're Joseph Smith, apparently. So yeah, you have all sorts of things that are just, he makes up names all the time, including like the four deities, but what you will see is all sorts of very common deities of Egypt being represented. And we have number 7, for example, the god Min, and if a phallic god, that is a sexually aroused male deity. And I don't think the patriarch Abraham was into into drawing pagan deities with their dogs at attention. But yeah, so this is in the final facsimile. You can see that's at the very end of the translation of the Book of Abraham. This one is much smaller, so I can read through these. So we see one. This is this seated figure on the throne, and Joseph Smith wrote that this was Abraham sitting on Pharaoh's throne by the politeness of the king, which a crown upon his head representing the priesthood as emblematic of the grand presidency in heaven, because that's, they're all presidents back then, with the scepter of justice and judgment in his hand. But this is Osiris writing above the figure, recitations by Osiris for most of the Westerners, the Atef crown also identifies him as Osiris. So, you know, if you have ever seen a depiction of Osiris, he always has the ataf. He always has that very distinctive crown on his head. Number 2, which is this figure to the very left, says King Pharaoh, whose name is given in the characters above his head. This figure is a female, not male. Writing above the figure, Isis the Great, the god's mother. So he misgendered. Worst of all the things he did with his deceptions and all sorts of nonsense with women, he misgenders deities. That's horrible. Number 3,
well,
which
it's kind
is
of
this.
odd that, I mean, this is obviously a woman. It's kind of odd that he
Yeah,
would know that.
you'd think so, but I don't know. If we're going to spend any time trying to make sense of Joseph Smith, we will be here for quite a while, and probably go mad in the process. But so 3 is this little piece of furniture in front of Osiris to his right, if we're looking at the picture. So signifies Abraham in Egypt, as given also in figure 10, facsimile number 1. That's not important. But this is again a libation table with wines and oils, and you know, a common thing you would have in Egypt. Number 4 is the Prince of Pharaoh, King of Egypt, as written above of his head.
OBS crashed, so let me bring Posh Spice back up.
Okay, I don't know what happened.
OBS crashed. Go ahead.
Okay,
you're back.
I don't know if I continued or you.
So we were at, I think we were at number 4, another woman.
Yeah. So the misgendering, the second misgendering crashed me. Right. So this is the Ma'at, and I wanted to say Ma'at is very important. She's also one of the better known gods because we have all sorts of writings about Ma'at and justice. This is, in fact, also, I think, etymologically very tied into the word justice in Hebrew, because Hebrew is what we call an Afro-Semitic language. A lot of words come from Egyptian, especially. Like seraph means serpent, right? And they're the throne guardian serpents. If you look at a throne of a pharaoh or like his headgear, it's all serpentine because it's invoking these serpentine guardian, throne guardian spirits. So we have Shulem in number 5, one of the king's principal waiters, as represented by the characters above his hand. So this is this 5th person. This is a deceased individual wearing the traditional cone of perfumed grease and lotus flower on his head, writing above the figure, the Osiris whore, justified forever. And number 6, what I mentioned, is Olimla, a slave belonging to the prince. It says, not a slave, this is Anubis, guide of the dead, who is there to support the deceased.
Yeah, so he thought that because the character was black that it was a slave, but it's actually just Anubis.
Yeah, now again, you might be inclined to think that this is the case because he is in early 19th century America. So he would associate black skin with being a slave. But no, apparently God just inspired him to read this wrongly and name this figure a slave for pretty normal contemporaneous reasoning.
Man, it's just so odd that anyone would believe this, but hopefully you guys, I mean, everything's fine, right? Everything's back to normal. You can hear us good. All right, go ahead, Posh, you're up.
Okay. So that's our facsimiles that ended up in the book, right? Again, obvious mistakes from our perspective, from his perspective. Who's going to actually read this probably was the thinking. But yeah, so I have some notes here, like this alone proves Joseph Smith to be a fraud. These documents were acquired in 1835. It was only in 1822 that the French Orientalist Jean-François Champollion created the key to interpreting hieroglyphics, etc., etc. So now that we have these things unlocked, we're pretty good on being able to interpret what's left of the papyri. But this will conclude our first half of the critique, and
Now,
that is the critique
yes,
of the process.
I want to remind everybody that you can support the stream via Super Chats. Super Chats are done through Streamlabs or through YouTube natively. I will split the Super Chats with Posh. So if you'd like to support the work and the research, it's not free. Please do so by your generous Super Chats through Streamlabs, and I will read them here in a moment. We got a couple before we get to this next part here. An Athanasius says for 7, thank you so much for defending orthodoxy and debunking heterodox clowns. Thank you so much, Athanasia. Appreciate that. DC Woodworking. Posh, where have you been?
I've been working for the Crucible, and I want to do more streams on geopolitics, but I always give it like 5 to 6 days. And there has not been 5 to 6 days without a monumental, world-changing event in the last 2 years, I would think. So I never, it always would result in a hot take. And by the time I process things, you know,
now there's a new one. Yeah, it's like things are happening too fast.
Yeah, like a news cycle is measured in minutes, I think. But other than that, I do plan a big stream on dispensationalism. But because I've really gathered a lot of things to try and create a package. Like I can't do what you do, which is a lot of research on like the background figures and everyone involved. That's a skill set I have not acquired, and I'm just happy to crib your work. But I have. But you know, I always go on Twitter just to throw out. Recently, I've started asking everyone, you know, what. Maybe I shouldn't talk about this. I don't know how comfortable you are with the topic itself, being on YouTube. But let's just say I've been testing out some arguments because no one apparently knows what's the difference between pagan sacrifices and biblical sacrifices. Why in Isaiah 8:1, I mention always 1:18 because it uses the word judge, like judge the fatherless, and I keep trying to say, do you think that means they're going to look at this fatherless guy over there? No, that's not what judge means, and that's not what judge not lest he be judged means. But the first chapter of Isaiah, God keeps saying, I'm full of your sacrifices. But he says, stop them. Like, they're an abomination to me if your heart's not in it. Right? In the pagan world, if your God is unhappy, you ramp up the sacrifices in quantity and quality. Right? But God, the God of the Bible, like, he doesn't care about it. Like you mentioned Psalm 51. He says, you know, a humble and contrite heart is what God wants. And, you know, in the Old Testament, sacrifices are part of it. But all of this is I'll just go ranting on for an hour if you just let me. So.
It's all right. No one says $5. If you'd like a good cross-examination of Mormon history, the channel Dan Vodal on YouTube has many good videos. I mentioned this content to Jim Bob. No one. Dan Vogel has books on the Book of Abraham as well. Counterdocs, $5. They are revising all of their history because new Mormon apologists want to reinterpret the church fathers as now Mormons, and this is a new form of Mormon apologetics. Yeah, I mean, this is a standard deception. I mean, it's so dumb that really it only dupes other dumb people. So, Scumma Bear, $10. Do you think the Left Behind series was a psyop? Well, I mean, to a degree, in that it was promoted by the establishment. And, you know, Tim LaHaye, you know, is a participant in this, you know, evangelical Zio worship phenomenon. To what degree he was personally given money to push this, it's hard to say. I don't know that, but I would not be surprised. Allegedly, that's my opinion. And Skooma Bear says, so many of us grew up where Protestant Bible studies use this as a book to justify their belief. Yeah, exactly. I grew up with the same stuff. They also have a lens for eisegesis to read into the text of Revelation. Absolutely. That's what we covered earlier today. Overlord, $10. I'm an ex-Mormon. The Mormon leadership tells the members not to look at any information outside of that church. And because of that, it is a cult. Absolutely. I've had many debates, discussions with, you know, Mormon missionaries walking around. And my first encounter with Mormon missionaries 20 years ago, or more, I remember saying, I'll watch you guys' Mormon propaganda video if you guys will come over and watch a Mormon critique video with me. And they had to ask their higher ups, and the higher ups told them no, they couldn't watch the Mormon
Not worth it,
critique.
huh?
Yep.
Well, you know, as I said, I participated in one of these debates just by substituting for Andrew. But I've also talked a lot about this with Jim Bob because he's had multiple. And it's so fun. The first debate was Andrew against some guy who's really a nice guy. I think he's some type of chaplain. Obviously, in America, you can't have a single faith chaplain. But whatever the case, like really a decent guy. And I said to Andrew prior to the debate, listen what he will do. He will expect you to either watch the cartoon that you and Jim Bob reviewed at least once, if not multiple times. Or secondly, he'll expect like you watch the episode of South Park. Like, dum 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 dum. So yeah, and I brought him all of these arguments that were completely from their own scriptures, and he was just left there bewildered. But they're so unprepared. They just expect you to talk about their magic underwear and maybe mention Kolob and how, you know, the Native Americans are cursed for idolatry. They used to be white, if you will. So they expect these they're low-hanging fruit. Like, they are still correct, but they want to say that this is just low-hanging fruit and you don't actually read it, and etc. etc. But it's very, very poor apologetics on their end, and it's mostly just, well, you know, I believe the Spirit speaks to me. And that's what they told Jim Bob last time, and the time before that, and the time Jim Bob and I were debating. So, you know, it's nonsense.
Yeah. Okay, so the next couple super chats we've got no one $2. No, we did that. Excuse me. Lori Costello, $10. I hope these people will leave all this Mormon stuff. Well, Mormons are making a massive propaganda push everywhere, especially on the internet in the last couple of years. So hopefully, yeah, we can, with God's grace, you know, help people leave this nonsense. JB Peltier,
Yep.
This Paul guy freaking rules. The apostles. Moral Autist, $5. What is the etymology of the word Mormon? Good question. What does the actual word refer to?
Well, now you've got me stumped. So there is, I believe, an angel called Mormon.
Well, yeah, we know about Moroni, but
yeah, Moroni.
Mormon. Let's see what we get.
So it derives from the Book of Mormon. Nice job.
It's probably within the book. Maybe is there something within the book itself?
Yeah, it's called the Book of Mormon. So right, and there's constituent books, your Nephi's and etc. But I think it's just like a self-contained word. There's no etymology. In fact,
here's a Mormon website claiming that the word means more good.
Is Mon short for money? Is that what we're doing here?
I'm not kidding. This is what this Mormon website, Church News, says.
I've seen enough Mormon etymology. That's why I gave up at some point. He keeps ending aya to like names. So aya, right, depending on the word, like Isaiah and Jeremiah, pronounced differently in English, but it's the same ending. So it has like Mosea, etc.
Yeah, it's like made up gibberish, more gooderer. Yeah, Lori, let's know we did that. Randall, $5. Randall Southern, how can I have a thoughtful conversation with the LDS missionaries if they don't know that the King Follett Discourse teaches that God was once a man? I mean, if they're not willing to go look it up, then you're not going to be able to say anything to them. I mean, if a person's mind is closed, they're not going to care. So, you know, if you can, I think, detect pretty easily if somebody's open to questioning things, and people that are not open to questioning, you might as well just move on.
Yes, and as Orthodox, we should be very much aware, like our idea of theosis, more consequently, we have the idea of demonosis. As Father Stephen DeYoung, I'm still pushing that term because it's a pretty good term. You either synergize with God or with demons, and that transforms you. But at the same time, if you have a family life, that will transform you. And these people are usually very deep in these groups, and I seriously doubt every Mormon, once they close the door and go from a happy face to start beating their children, with a stick, right? So if you're very deep into a community and you're a very small minority, obviously maybe in Utah you have majorities and stuff, but nationwide you're very, self-enclosed and self-sufficient. So you don't want to leave. So you're emotionally and spiritually connected to this. So you have to understand it's not just that people are stupid, because this is just what we've covered so far is so full of nonsense, very easily provable nonsense. And they will keep making things up. And I think it's like a battered wife syndrome or something.
All right, let's move on to the next section there. For those that are curious, you can follow Posh right here on X at the Posh Redneck.
Thank you. So I will read the header for the Book of Abraham in the Pearl of Great Price. Says, a translation of some ancient records that have fallen into our hands from the catacombs of Egypt, purporting to be the writings of Abraham while he was in Egypt, called the Book of Abraham, written by his own hand upon papyrus. Now, maybe this doesn't jump out at people immediately, but what do you think is already a mistake here?
Say it again.
So this may not jump out to people as it did to me, but do you already notice a mistake of having a Book of Abraham while Abraham was in Egypt?
I'm sure it's something obvious. What is it?
He doesn't get the name Abraham until after he leaves.
Oh, Abram versus Abraham. Okay.
Yeah, so he would have been Abram at this point in Genesis 12 when they're in, and I think it's in Genesis 17, verses 5 and 15, where Abram becomes Abraham and Sarai becomes Sarah. Right? He goes from the great father to the father of nations. She goes from my princess to princess. Right? Now, here's the thing. Sarah is mentioned in the Book of Abraham, but she is Sarai in the Book of Abraham. So I don't know what to do with that fact, because the point where Abraham is Abraham but Sarah is Sarai is just between the verses in between Genesis 5 and Genesis.
Yeah, but obviously the sun gets its light from Kolob, so all this is none of this matters.
Yeah, but I'm so confused. Like, either they should both be with their old names or the new names. But Abraham gets his new name anachronistically, but Sarai keeps.
Well, those texts are all corrupted, so you can just do the Muslim thing where you say, "Well, here, since it's a problem with my system, then the Bible's corrupted." And everywhere else that backs up my system, the Bible's true and good, and I use it as a source. Worldwide, 1873, $5. Jay, I only have a Greek church near me. Is that okay? Should I be worried about this? I'm new to Orthodoxy. No, you don't have to worry about that until there's an actual excommunication. RIP says for $2. Here's $2. It's the GDP of all Serbia. Ooh.
The amount of law Jim Bob and Andrew have created about Serbia is outstanding to me. It's so fun, like eating salted weasel for Christmas.
Yeah, I heard that you guys also then take the weasel pelt and you actually brew some kind of beer from that pelt. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, I love those. But I appreciate doubling our GDP. Rip, I know who he is. So as I said, so we have this discrepancy. As you said, the only thing you can do is say somehow corruption. But again, it would be slightly more defensible if they were either both pre or post renaming.
Now,
But
didn't Abraham at one point go to Serbia? Is that part of the?
he was a Serb, actually. Everyone was until the Great Fall, when
Well, everybody has this out of Africa theory, but we all know that our origins are all actually Serbia.
Yes, near the Danube. We actually have some of the oldest geological and archaeological finds. That is actually true. Like the Vinča culture near Belgrade. And near me, I think, near where I live, I think we found like the oldest archery ring.
Do you have any megaliths that you could say are Nephilim UFO experimentation sites to create Serbs?
And no, because we absorb them all. We just absorb their powers. That's why we're all so tall. And we get deep voices and stuff. No, you have to go to Bosnia for the pyramids and stuff. If you're aware of that, that's a fun one to go down.
Let me hold on. So you've got Google says you have Lipinski Vir, a Mesolithic Neolithic settlement. That's not a megalith, though.
No. As I said, we are very good at hiding like our past. We don't want to boast too much, like about my bishopric is centered in the birthplace of Emperor Constantine. We're too big to fail.
Too big to fail. Now I've got here's a website for some weird website called the Megalith Portal, and it looks like an old GeoCities website, and they've got a bunch of pictures of pots and buildings. So this guy's arguing that you do have megaliths.
I'm not aware of megaliths per se, but again, lots of archaeology.
Okay.
So we had problems. There's this hill in the middle of my home city, and they wanted to put up lamps around like the track that goes around, and people often go running there. And it was so deep buildings.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I'm trying to refute you in all fun, but it looks like you're right. None of these are actually megaliths; they're just archaeology sites.
Well, there is a mountain called Stol, Stol, which is pretty flat at the top. So maybe that's a remnant or something.
Me Too says, ask Posh about Jovanka Jolik.
Jovanka, what's the surname?
Jolik, Jolic.
Not sure. Let me look it up.
That's okay. I mean, we got a basically.
Oh God, no!
They're asking. It's basically Mila Jovovich. So how's that?
No. So I couldn't connect her name and her face. So there's this woman who claims like everyone's a Serb, claims Elon Musk is a Serb.
Okay.
And she goes on like our conspiracy podcast networks. And she's just like a regular woman, and she just keeps spouting things about UFOs and whatnot. So
a crazy woman. Meme. Now, is Mila Jovovich Serbian, or what is she?
I think half.
Okay.
I think on her father's side, which explains the surname, but I think she's half Italian or something.
All right. So, yes. Getting back to, I'm sorry, we're having fun, which is fine. We're getting back to the problems here. What is this section here called the philosophy of a future state? Is that where we're at? Where are we at? Light of Kolo, future state. What's next?
So you can ignore the rest of these from the website I sent you with the facsimiles, right? That's where you are. Yeah. So the rest of the material there isn't very heavy. We'll go off of the notes I have. So one is, we already went through, like, it's anachronistic for Abraham to be called Abraham while he is in Egypt. But there is then also a problem. If this was written by Abraham himself, the book starts with, in the land of the Chaldeans at the residence of my father, I, Abraham, and apparently he never says I without adding Abraham, because that's how people write, right? saw that it was needful for me to obtain another place of residence, etc., etc. Here's the problem. The Chaldeans won't inhabit that place for at least 1400 years. There are obviously some variations on dating when exactly Abraham was around, but if we go with 2000 years, like BC, we're about 1200 years off from Chaldeans.
Now, you may have mentioned this too, but also, I mean, that's a great historical blunder, but I mean, ancient texts citing the King James.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, so he goes by Ur of Chaldees or Chaldeans, right? Now, this would be known as such only after they would settle there, right? The Chaldeans, who will return later on to give us some pretty funny etymology. But, you know, we have things in the Bible where place names get updated, like these toponyms. So Dan, there are manuscripts of the Bible which say Dan, which is now Heliopolis. Obviously, that name change would not occur until after the Greeks conquered the place with Alexandrian conquests. But so it doesn't change anything. And there are things in the Bible that get updated over time. So Moses didn't speak what we know as biblical Hebrew. He would have spoken an earlier version of it that is called Paleo-Hebrew. And we have now, I only dabble with Hebrew. I focus much more on Indo-European languages, specifically European languages. But we have like works like the Song of the Sea, which is very archaic in its construct. So that is the least changed one, because poetry tends to remain, you know, pretty stagnant in its form, very difficult to translate, very difficult to update and maintain its structure and stuff, unlike prose or just regular records. So I've heard from people who are experts in Semitic languages and ancient Middle Eastern languages who say, yeah, we have these pieces like the Song of the Sea, which are exceedingly difficult to translate, even if your biblical Hebrew is excellent. So obviously these things get updated over time, and we are left with certain holdovers, like mentioning Chaldees, even though, again, they would be after Moses himself. But if we have records of Abraham himself, why would he speak of the Chaldeans or the Chaldees more than a millennium before they would inhabit the land? And he claims to be from that land, right? So we have just gone through the title, header, and the first sentence, and this is where we are with massive historical mistakes.
We've got to move a little bit quicker.
Okay.
What's next in terms of, we've got the anachronisms here with, you know, Chaldeans. What's next?
Okay. Obviously, we have Elkanah, Libnah, Marmachra, and Korash nowhere to be found. Now, here's one. Pharaoh is mentioned as a proper noun, the name of the first ruler of Egypt. This is nonsense, not to mention that the rulers of Egypt didn't really use the title Pharaoh, which means the great house, after the royal palace. It was an epithet of honor first used in the 18th dynasty, starting from the mid-16th century BC. So even if it were a title, it would be centuries after Abraham. He's also seen as a god, but not as the god king, but like a regular one, which is strange in multiple ways. So Pharaoh is said to be this first ruler who was just and righteous and all of that. I'm seeing a discontinuity between that and like having priests of Pharaoh, like we looked at the facsimiles earlier. But as I mentioned in my note, that like the Egyptian kings didn't call themselves pharaohs. We call them pharaohs because of the Bible, right? Because the Bible calls them that. But that is the name of the royal palace. And it was used from the 16th century, not even consistently, up until much later. So again, an anachronism, because he saw the word pharaoh and wanted to do something with it. And what he did was
Is this where they come up? The Mormons have this made-up idea of reformed Egyptian.
Yes, which no Egyptologist knows what it is. So it's just reformed Egyptian. What is it? What time period? Can we get anything? Nope. Just trust me, bro. So that's because we're moving on. Now I want to go through this fun little part, and we will be using a whiteboard because Egypt is alleged to have been discovered by a woman, daughter of Egyptus, who was a daughter of Ham. The name is said to be Chaldean for forbidden. Now, here's the thing. First of all, we have the language of the Chaldeans, which, as we said, not really a thing, especially not at that point. But it says it's Egyptus. So what we have him doing is basically trying to create like a fake Latin word, and he writes it as Egyptus. So just smacks an us at the end of Egypt. And his or her, I can't remember anymore, daughter discovers the land, and it means forbidden in Egypt, in Chaldean. Here's the problem. Egypt, the name itself is Greek, Egyptos, right? Which means, I think that, what was it, the gate of Ptah or something, right? I'll write the Greek one. Okay. Now, what the Romans did was they took this name. There are alternative etymologies, but one thing we know about the ancient Greeks is their etymologies are not exactly reliable. But apparently this is like the House of Ptah or the Gate of Ptah, because there was a big temple of Ptah near the border. But what the Romans did is this. So this is how you would write it in Latin. So he didn't even get the Latin one correctly. He got the etymology incorrect because he said, first of all, a language that he would not have even heard of in his day, treated it as a fake Latin word and translated it in a way that makes no sense.
The chat is fixated. The chat is fixated on Serbian 4K equals 144p.
There's a joke that if you want to watch Slavic videos, you have to go with 144p. That's the true Slavic experience. That's
you guys actually, in your eyes, see things at 144p, I think.
Yeah, so you see I'm wearing spectacles now, and that's because I have astigmatism, and that's my orthodox protest against the stigmata.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's a stigmata-ism. That's the etymology of that. So
we got high IQ. We got like 150 IQ word jokes being played here, and the audience is over here trying to figure out like what Bitcoin is. Like we got 80 IQ.
Our IQ is like my P count.
Your IQ is your pixel definition, exactly 144p. Guys, remember, as a side note, yes, because Bitcoin has dipped significantly. If you want to get started with Bitcoin, you can use my promo code for Swan Bitcoin right here. They are a Bitcoin-only company, and I do get a little bit of a bonus there, a small bonus, if you sign up to get Bitcoin with Swan. You can now store it there and transfer it off, and you can now sell. So I did do at Swan, which they didn't used to do that. You can now sell if you need to. But hey, discount prices today. And this is the time when smart money goes all in. I'm not telling you what to do because I'm not your registered financial advisor, but we have a significant dip. So it's a good time if you'd like to get a little bit of a, discount BTC. Use that promo code there. Mud says for $10, I'm happy to see Posh back. It gives me great joy to watch how he skins his weasel. Wait.
Sounds like a euphemism.
It's great joy because of the weasel skinning shack that he has in Serbia. Okay, he makes beautiful tiny winter socks for all the goats at his village. Yes, and actually, for those that don't know, the weasels, they actually run inside little motors or hamster wheels, and the weasels power the dial-up AOL internet. And I know that only because it's the same setup that Tristan has down in Ecuador. It's the same setup for. It's not called dial-up. It's actually called roll-up, because they have to roll the internet in those hamster wheels, weasel wheels, and so. But then when the weasels die, because they get heart attacks a lot of time, Posh can actually skin them and brew a local IPA from those weasel skins. So thank you for that.
Well, I'd appreciate if you stopped, leaking the Serbo-Ecuadorian power generation secrets. But other than that, yeah, we are very much into. We are now very conservative in terms of the environment, just to go against Bill Gates. So now
I like it.
And I are
I like
vegans.
it.
And
yes.
So whatever Bill Gates says, we do the opposite.
You guys do produce beautiful women out of these village operations. I don't know how you do it, but you guys do produce some babes there. Thank you guys. Welcome everybody from the Crucible. Shout out to Jim Bob. Shout out to Andrew in the Crucible. Let's see. No one says for $2. Actually, Mormon is a prophet listed in the Book of Mormon. I don't know why that wasn't coming up on the websites, but thank you for that. And shout out to all the weasels powering that dial-up internet that Posh has got over there in Serbia. Now, where are we at? Let's see. Apologize. I keep getting distracted by all these awesome Serbian lore.
I was talking about the name for Egypt. So again, this tickled my brain. I know Latin and Greek, so this really just jumped out at me, had me a hollering in terms of laughter. But additional information for people interested. So the Egyptians would have called their land Kemet, which means the black land, and no, not the Kangs type of black, but just like fertile soil around the River Nile. And as far as what people like the Chaldeans or anyone, so Abraham would have spoken obviously some type of Akkadian, right? And in these lands, including like every Semitic language, it is some variation of Misru, Misiru, which means the borderlands of frontier, right? For those of you who don't know, like the Arabs, like they call them Misru, I think, right? The Semitic languages are very rigid in terms of their consonants, so they're very, very easy to understand amongst each other. Like European languages just scatter into a million different variations. But you know the song from Pulp Fiction, like yeah, that's a Greek song called Misirlo, meaning like the Egyptian girl, Egyptian woman, whatever. So you can look that up. Misirlou. Okay, that's how you would spell it. It's a lot slower than the film version.
Well, I mean, check out this babe right here. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm over here looking up the women that Serbia produces.
I can't see the screen.
I'm starting to think that maybe the weasels have taken over, because I'm over here thinking about, okay, you guys made a Mila Jovovich or two, and now I'm seeing like I don't know, like what's the women in your village like? Is it Mila Jovovich's, or we got weasels? Where are we at here? Because that's what matters right now.
Well, a lot of them are taller than me, and I'm 6'1", so not exactly.
How are they? Why are they tall? Is that the Nephilim thing that we're talking about earlier?
Well, yes, that's what I'm thinking. We have like this girl at the gym, legitimately 6'5". But yeah, so very tall and will stab you. but
So,
tend to
stab
look
you.
pretty decent. Oh yeah, Eastern European women, great looks.
Do you know
Will stab
Dr.
you
Olga?
over and over.
I'm about to post my Dr. Olga Ravazzi interview. Do you know her? She seems a little intimidating. She could probably take you out if she had to.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I've given up on the idea that
Okay,
I will make it through my
Posh,
entire
let's
life.
be honest. Have you experienced domestic spousal abuse from the Serbian women that have? That's what we're concerned about.
Well, I didn't know it was. I was going to get emotional, but well,
Okay.
the men, we are always so drunk, we don't feel pain. So yeah, they beat us, but it never works. So they get to let out some steam. We can absorb it fairly easily because we're all built like Uruk-hai, apparently.
Okay. Well, Mud says for $5, the women in Pasha's village don't have a beard, unlike the village next door. So it's a plus. So that's good.
Yeah, I can't say I have a beard. So I spec all my masculinity points into the voice. So that's the choice I made, and I am left looking like a Mongolian. But
Mud says again, Serbo-Ecuadorian power structure sounds like a Finnish metal band. It is a Finnish metal band, in fact. And they only live stream their concerts in 144p on Weasel dial-up.
Yeah, that and again the cleanest form of energy. Maybe we're so tall because we don't get like the 5G radiation,
Okay.
and the rest of like the power generation radiation that you get because it's so natural.
I like how this has just totally turned into like comedy hour, which is fine because that's what I love to do. Dean says for $10.
People asked you when you were going to get funny.
Dean says, Posh, we need updates on whether you have decided to like peanut butter.
I don't like it. I feel like I'm eating like plaster or something.
Plaster.
And I don't. Yeah, it just sticks to the top of your mouth and stuff like. Why? I always wondered why you would eat like that with jam. Like in Serbia, we don't really mix sweet and sour.
Well, I don't
That's
like
a big
peanut butter
no-no.
with jam. I agree with that, but yeah, peanut butter is pretty good. I mean, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, maybe in like a candy bar, it can work. Like the unsalted
right.
one, mixed with like a biscuit or something and some chocolate. I don't really eat sweet, but when I was a child, I really didn't mind that. So that's the best I can give you.
All right. How much more? I'm gonna have to go pretty soon. So, where are we at with
Yep.
our Mormon expose?
So I can speed through a lot of this. So it says it speaks of the people of the earth being blessed in Abraham's seed, even with the gospel. Now here's a problem. Like they treat gospel like it's some word you can put in the mouth of Abraham, but gospel, evangelion, or evangelion in modern Greek, is a specific. It's a technical term. And it's the good news isn't like, hey, you won some money or something, you inherited something from like a dead aunt, whatever. No, it is the good news. You would send a herald of like an emperor or an important general or senator in Rome who was going to visit some city. He would send a herald, and he would read out his euangelia. It's usually found in the plural. So his accomplishments. So when we speak of the gospel of Christ, it is his victory over death and sin. And it is an announcement that he's coming. That's why people ask, what do I do to be saved? When, this king you speak of is coming, right? So it makes no sense because in this book of Abraham, it says, which pertains to like salvation and blessings and stuff like, yeah, sure. But we are so detached from in the Hellenized and even Judea, that is, I would argue this is also a huge anachronism in this book. Okay, yeah, so the Urim and the Thummim. Throughout Mormonism, we see the seer stones, the Urim and Thummim. And there, I don't know what you do. You like put them in front of your eyes, next to your eyes, and you like get visions and stuff. But that's not what the Urim and Thummim were. The Urim and Thummim, and as far as I know, we don't get that until we get the high priesthood with Aaron. And the description of what the high priest has, his ephod and like all the gemstones, etc., etc. But with these two stones, we don't know how exactly they were used. But their function was when no solution could be reached, they're trying to make a decision on something, they would cast the Urim and the Thummim, and however they would read the way they landed is they would say, well, God has, pushed over to this side. It's sort of like, we don't know if we're going to go to restaurant A or B, so you like flip a coin. That's what the seer stones were. They were not magic stones that you use to give yourselves vision or to translate things. So obviously this is again, this isn't just in the book of Abraham, but it is mentioned in the book of Abraham. And again, they are part of the high priest that we get with Aaron. This is a shorter one. In this book, Abraham is told by God to say Sarah was his sister, but in Genesis 12, this is not the case. In fact, it shows that Abraham doesn't fully trust God to protect him, so he lies. So in the biblical corpus, God doesn't tell this to Abraham. So throughout the Bible, we have reticence on the part of a lot of our protagonists, so to speak.
Yeah, notice this is very similar to Islam in that the Quran, for example, mixes up a lot of the biblical stories and gets them backwards.
Yes. So one thing I wanted to contact you about, I don't think I did say it, but I think I realized why they think Ezra is the son of Allah, because Ezra founded the synagogue system,
right?
And I think from this half-formed idea of Christianity and Judaism that Muhammad had, I think, well, Christians, they go to church once a week to worship the Son of God. So if Jews go to synagogue once a week and they worship the Son of God, and Ezra founded this synagogue system, I think he somehow reverse engineered it into an idea of Ezra being the son of Allah. That's literally the only explanation I could find as to why Jews would purport to believing that Ezra is the son of Allah.
You mean Mormons? You mean
No,
you mean not Jews? You mean Muslims?
Yeah, Muslims would claim that Jews believe that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but we see again these half-formed thoughts that just shatter into nonsense. And I have some smaller things like this is where we get kolob, eternal matter, eternal souls, multiplicity of God. This is the book you would go to find this. And again, it is supposed to serve as some type of pre-Genesis or like a foundation text.
And this is the only text that mentions kolob. So this is really the formative sci-fi space text part of Mormonism too, right?
Yes, and you would see why he would want it to be in this text, because it would be the oldest text we had, right? It is from Abraham himself. So we're almost not at least, but around 1,000 years away from Moses and stuff. So if you want to give credence to the nonsense you're trying to create, you would put it in the earliest possible book.
We have a Serb in the chat claiming that you are not Serbian. Is there any way that you could refute that?
Ja popio jesam, al nisam budala, aj ti meni reci, bili se udala. Try beating that. No one. I've just sang like the equivalent of Cotton Eye Joe. It's like a very memed song over here.
So Hard Time, does that prove to you that Posh is actually Serbian? I don't know why he's so convinced that you're not.
Maybe he sees this as a try-hard. And I also have these two Greek hats over here. So I might be betraying.
He said WTF. Now he doesn't know what to say. He's mystified.
I overserved him at that point.
All right, where are we at? Are we getting towards the conclusion?
We're pretty much at the end. There's a lot of smaller points I can make, but that's basically it. Especially if you've got to go.
Thank you so much, guys. Everybody, be sure and follow Posh. I've got him linked right here on the page. You can see I put his links in the chat as well if you want to follow him on X. And also, as you said, he's a researcher for the Crucible. And shout out to all those guys in Jim Bob and welcome. And let's see. Remember to head on over to chalk.com, the best in supplementation on the internet, choq.com, choq.com. And they have all of your supplement needs when it comes to getting in the gym, getting fit, becoming a toxic masculine bad boy right there. And then you can pull those Serbian weasel women that we saw earlier, and you'll be able to fend them off when they attack you because they're 8 feet tall. So you either pull a Mila Jovovich or you pull a brutalizer, beating, no, what's the word I'm looking for? A domestic abuse situation that's Posh's ex. You can handle these women with chalk.com. Use the promo code JY40 to get 40% off all of your based Serbian power juice so that the women don't beat you up. Posh, what are you going to leave us with? Thank you so much for this research.
No problem. Chalk.com. Be as tall as a Serbian woman.
Chalk.com, making you more Serb woman than the Serb women so that you can handle the Serb women. Thank you so much, Posh. Everybody have a great night, and we will talk to you and see you soon.
Yes, thank you very